Hello, everybody. My name is Rob Foster, and I am a leader in generative AI technology. I do it pretty much all the time, all day, every day at work. I'm very much a generative AI enthusiast, so I find that this technology is really creeping into my life more than I care to admit. But I used it to actually create. I was looking for like a theme song or like an intro music or whatever, so I actually used it to collaborate with me to create the song you just heard. So the intro song there. I'll do another kind of webcast talking about that. That's another topic entirely. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to create a webcast series, really focusing on the complexities of writing code around generative AI. What I've found is that generative AI solutions typically fall in a couple of different categories. One of those is a breadth category. So you can think about these tools like ChatGPT, like Microsoft Copilot, or some of the Google tools, some of the Amazon tools that really are broad-reaching, meant for many consumers to apply to a bunch of different kinds of use cases, and really something for everybody. These things are really, truly transformational. They're awesome. They really will help your productivity. But what we're going to focus on here, all of the vendors are really looking at that. So if you're using, Google Suite, if you're using like Gmail and all of the tools there, if you're using the Microsoft platform, if you're using Microsoft Word and PowerPoint and Excel, Outlook, all of the vendors that are really doing these types of these products are integrating generative AI into their tools to some degree. Some more than others. Some like Microsoft and Google are going really deep into this. But these are really kind of the breadth type of tools. You want to summarize an email. You want to help me build a PowerPoint or a Google Sheet. I've got questions about this data set in Excel. Now, once you get beyond that, and you quickly will, you're going to want to find these niche things that relate to your business. And this is really where these depth types of solutions come into. The depth type of solutions, it might be something custom, like you want to look at contracts, or you want to look at maybe summarizing meeting minutes in a way that makes sense, maybe for like this domain of expertise. So maybe you're a business analyst and you're working through with stakeholders on business requirements, and you might want to record those meetings and then help after the fact. Let AI help you actually build your design specs on that, or generate questions that you need to ask as follow-ups. So all of these things you can do to some degree with the breadth tools, but what I'm finding is you really won't get into the depth of the actual use cases that will you can do with the if you take a more custom coding route. So the idea of this webcast series is to really start building a foundation and looking at the key patterns and practices that I've identified by doing these types of solutions. And really, I want to just kind of boil it down to the basics that you need to learn, and then we will build on those basics. Because you can search on the internet, you can use ChatGPT, you can use GitHub Copilot or whatever to help you write these types of solutions. But I want to really focus on what's important. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of different ways to do this. And so I want to look at this as if you've never written Gen AI before, or if you have, maybe you can pick up on this and hit double speed or whatever and just kind of get to the points here. But the idea is that I want to be able to give you a set of practices that you can use and then start applying immediately to your coding. So as we're looking at this, I'm going to be doing several things. So I'm going to be looking at Python. We're going to be writing this solution, or this webcast series using Python. I'm going to be using VS Code. And I'm going to be using Azure OpenAI. So there's a bunch of different libraries out there that can help you code this. And I want to just kind of start with the basics. So if you were to go out and look at, I'm just going to open up, before you get started here, I said we were going to be using Python. So what you need to do first Before you open up VS Code or you download VS Code or anything like that, you need to go and download the Python interpreter here. So if you go to python.org/downloads and then click download Python, whatever the latest version is, this just happens to be the latest version at the time of this webcast. Go ahead and download that. That will basically allow you to start writing Python applications on your desktop. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up VS Code, and what you need to do with VS Code is you need to install a couple of extensions here, maybe just one really. I'm going to go into my extensions on VS Code. VS Code, if you're not familiar, is a free download. You can download it. It's a free development environment from Microsoft. You can download it and use it to do all of these exercises with. One of the things you need to make sure that you have in place is the Python extension from Microsoft. And what this will allow you to do is create a virtual environment with Python. It will let you write and debug code with Python as well. But really, this is the main thing you need to have in place here. Now I've got a directory open here, and I've got some code written in here that I'll just kind of go through. I don't want to write it on the fly here, but once you get Python installed, right? So you've got Python to download, you've got Python to install, you've got VS Code to download and set up, and then you need to install the Python extension. You have to then go out and create what's called a virtual environment. And in a virtual environment for Python and VS Code just allows you to install the libraries locally, but they actually only get installed within the context of this directory. So there's nothing to really install. All of the installs are managed through VS Code. And so it's going to basically create a new file in here called .venv. It's actually a directory, but the way you actually set this up, it's really easy. If you go to the command window here and you go to show and run commands and then create Python environment or Python create environment, you can create it and it's going to start asking you some questions. I'm just going to select create a virtual environment, create a venv. And then it's going to ask me what interpreter I want to use. And I'm going to use whatever's installed on my laptop here. And it's going to set this environment up. So you can see now I've got a virtual environment set up. It's creating this. And then I can start opening a command line window or a terminal and then start setting up the libraries that I need. So once this installs here, it's going to quickly finish here in just a second here, but it takes just a few seconds to install. We'll jump into the code. Let's click on show logs to see what it's doing. Yeah, so it actually just finished as soon as I clicked on that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my code window here. And you can see I've got a bunch of yellow things here because I haven't installed any libraries in my virtual environment. So I've actually got this commented out here for the libraries that I need to install. But what we can do is we can actually open a new terminal window. And this terminal window is going to open in the context of our virtual environment. Or actually in context of our directory. And I'm just going to, what you have to do is you have to activate the virtual environment. So I'm just going to .venv / there's a scripts directory in there, and then I'm just going to call the activate. There's a file in here it's called activate. I think it's an executable, but it'll activate the virtual environment. And then you get this little kind of colored syntax here, just letting you know that you're in the virtual environment. Now, I'm going to go ahead and set up these libraries here. So I'm going to install OpenAI. I'm going to install Langchain. I'm going to install Langchain OpenAI, and then the .env. And I'll talk about these here in just a second. So I'm just going to say pip install OpenAI. This is going to download OpenAI and install it. And doesn't take long at all. Now I'm going to pip install Langchain. And as I start installing these things, these these yellow lines will go away. So Langchain, I'll talk about Langchain here in a minute, but very important that you learn this library, because what it's going to allow you to do is Langchain is going to basically automate a lot of the things that you would have to manually write yourself in calling the APIs, whether it be an OpenAI or Hugging Face or whatever large language model you want to do. You essentially learn how to use Langchain and you know how to use them all, right? So it's really just a matter of connecting to those. So it's a nice little library. I see it a lot used in the in production in the industry. There are other things, other libraries. I think Microsoft has one called Semantic Kernel. If you're a C# developer, you can use it. But for this one, we're just going to use Langchain because it's pretty standard and it's pretty straightforward to use. It takes just a second to install those, so it should be finishing up now. Yeah, so now I'm going to pip install Langchain-OpenAI, and this is basically the OpenAI libraries for Langchain. And now I'm going to install the .in environment here, so .env. So looking back at Langchain, so the way Langchain is structured is you've let me share my browser here right quick. And so the way Langchain is actually structured is really nice. And if you go to python.langchain.com, you can go to all the documentation for Langchain. And they've got some really great examples, and it's really well documented on how to use this thing. But what it is that there's several different platforms on top of Langchain that make up the Langchain ecosystem, right? The ones we're going to be focused on are the libraries, which is Langchain itself. And this is kind of the default overarching library that is the defaults of how you actually create agents or chains, prompting, things like that. Then they've got a community library, Langchain-community, and this is where you'll find things like document loaders. Like, let's just say you want to query a PDF, or maybe you've got a text document or a Word document you want to query. These document loaders are actually in here that makes it really easy. If you know you're going to read a PDF, you can just use the PDF document loader and all of the codes written for you, essentially, to read that type of document. So they've got them for basically every document that you could possibly want to read, and it's growing every day. But that's an example of a Langchain community. If there's a document type that you don't see in here, you can obviously extend it, create your own document reader or document loader, and go from there. And then there's the core libraries, which is really around the batching and the streaming of the way you call into these things, call into the large language models. So that's really what Langchain is overall. It's a set of libraries that kind of automate the task. You could write all this stuff yourself. Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that. But what you'll find is once you get into the more advanced concepts like the retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, where you're actually sending prompts into documents and getting responses back, Langchain is going to save you a ton of time and effort writing and maintaining code that already exists, and it works really well for you. So that's Langchain overall. So going back to VS Code, I'm importing some libraries from Langchain, and what we've got is as we look at Langchain, I'm creating some different things here, and we'll talk about these things as we go through. But all of these things are kind of basics things, like there's a text splitter that you're going to use, and this is how you can actually split documents up into, or chunk documents, as they say, into multiple pieces, and then send those pieces independently into the prompt that you send in the large language model. So if you've got, let's just say, a 30-page PDF, you can potentially send it in there if you have enough context. You can send the whole document in, but if you've got, let's just say, a 100-page PDF, you're probably going to have to chunk that up into multiple sections, whether it be at the sentence level, paragraph level, page level, whatever it may be, whatever you decide. And then you're going to have to essentially chunk in the relevant parts of that document into your prompt, and start to really focus on those parts so that you can source ground your response with the content it needs, the context it needs, and then it can start creating answers for the questions you send in based on that. And all that's done with a text splitter. So you'll be using text splitter all over the place. Same thing with prompts. You'll be using prompts. So we're using a prompt template. Whatever language model you're going to use, they're all really structured a very similar way. So you can see we're using Azure Chat OpenAI. We're using large language model chains. There are other types of chains you can use, and we're not going to cover that in here. And then we're going to use callbacks here. Callbacks is actually something that's fairly new to the library. And what this will allow you to do is determine how many tokens you're sending in, and it'll help you calculate the cost for how much this call is actually going to be when you call in. So I want to go down and I want to execute this code right quick, just so we can see what it does. And kind of going down here, and I'll come back and explain all of this later here after we run it. But basically, we're going to send a prompt in. Can you tell me a joke about a duck? And then it's going to respond with whatever the joke is that it's going to create. And because we're actually using this callback, we're going to get some results back from this callback that tells how many tokens we used, and then the average the price of what this call actually cost. So I'm just going to run this, and I'm going to set it up to run in a Python file using the Python debugger. And so it's going to run now. And as it runs through, you're going to see, tell me a joke about a duck, and it's going to respond with the joke. I hope it should. It's going to respond with the joke, and yep, so tell me a joke about a duck. It's going to get the joke, it's writing the joke, and here it's about to respond. Yeah, so why don't ducks tell jokes when they are flying? Because they would quack up. And so that's the actual response that we got back from GPT-4 Turbo. And so you can see that we used 93 tokens. So the prompt was 65 tokens, and the completion tokens was 28 tokens. We made one request, and you can see that it didn't cost a lot of money. So it was not even 1 penny, or a third of a penny to execute that. So the response actually came back from the large language model, and then so that was when we printed out the joke. So we printed the joke, or the prompt, can you tell me a joke about the duck? And the response was this, and then we printed out the callback, which is basically how much it cost. Pretty straightforward, but let's jump in and go a little deeper. So there are some things you have to set up about your large language model. Now, these are API parameters that you need to set up. Pretty much every large language model is going to have these, and these are just specific to OpenAI, or specifically Azure OpenAI. So I've got the endpoint, so the API base and the API key. I've actually got that stored in my .env file that we that's stored out here. I'm not going to pull this up because I don't want to share that with you, but these values are actually just stored in here. And then I've got some other parameters that we need to call, which is basically what model are we going to use? What model do we have deployed inside of Azure, and then what version of that model do we want to use? Now, this is the version that's available in Azure right now. Over time, this will eventually become a general availability. Right now, it's in preview. But as these models get updated, you'll have to change your version as you deploy these new models into Azure, or you consume them from OpenAI or wherever you're consuming from. As these models change, you'll need a way to update this. So, probably best to put all of this in a configuration somewhere, whether it be in Key Vault or something like that. But I just wanted to show this just so that you can see that these things are really just text values that you can configure. Now, going into the next set of code here is the prompt template. Now, the prompt template is, we could actually I could have just say, can you tell me a joke about a duck in here? But what I wanted to do is start the process of building these patterns, right? So this is a pattern that I've seen that you'll use over and over again, because you may not want to just pass in text. You might want to have some additional instructions or additional content that you want to pass into your prompt. This just gives you a way to do that. And then this text variable, or text in the curly braces, just creates a variable that for you inside of this text block. So you can add additional instructions here. This is a joke creator. You tell jokes. Can you make this joke in the style of George Carlin? Or whatever, right? So I don't know what this is going to come back with, but now I've kind of modified this to where now we've got some additional instructions that we're passing in. When we pass in the prompt, right, the prompt text in, it's going to pass in this whole prompt as the template, but whatever we typed into prompt text is just going to be injected into here where we've got text. So let's run this again. And you can see quickly how you can build on this. I hope the George Carlin joke doesn't come back bad, but we'll see. So let's get this going. Tell me a joke about a duck in the style of George Carlin. And here it comes. I hope. It is taking a little while longer to run here, but it will eventually finish. There we go. So that is a long joke. And yeah, so that did kind of create a different type of joke here. But in the style of George Carlin, I'm not going to read it to you, but you can see it used significantly more tokens here. So the tokens that it prompted with were a little more, not too many, and then it responded with significantly more tokens there. And it cost 2 cents, 2.5 cents to actually to run this prompt. So that's really about the prompt template here. You're going to use this in many different ways all over the map here. So your prompt template, once you figure out how to create these prompt templates, and then inject other additional instructions in here, there's a lot of power in that. And so it opens up the door to be able to do other things, especially as you start getting into passing in documents or things like that into the large language model. So this is just a prompt template I've got set up just as a string variable. What you have to do is you have to create a prompt, and I'm creating it using the prompt template object that we actually imported up here. So langchain.prompts, the prompt template object. We're creating a new prompt from a template, and we're passing in that text. So that's our prompt. Then what we have to do is set up our large language model. So in this case, we're using Azure Chat OpenAI. And then we just pass in all of our variables that we set up in the API parameters. So the endpoint, the API key, the version, the model name, the deployment name, and then I'm setting up the temperature here as well. You don't have to do this. I think it'll default to like 0.5, or there is a default. I think it's 0.5. But so basically the temperature is how creative the response is going to be. Do you want it to be more creative or do you want it to be more exact? So we're telling jokes here, so I wanted it to be really creative. So I set my temperature to 0.9. It can be any value between 0 and 1. So it's usually a decimal. And so I set the temperature here to be more creative, on the more creative side of creating jokes here. So that's the large language model. And then we need to create a chain, which basically chains together the model you're going to call, so the LLM, with the prompt. And that's your first chain, is I want to send a prompt into this large language model. Again, you could write all this code to do this manually, and it's not a significantly amount more, but this just simplifies that process here. And then the LLM chain is part of this Langchain.chains.llm. There. So that's where that object's defined. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a way. I need to create a way to actually execute this prompt. So we've got a prompt and it's associated with an LLM. So we've got a template set up and we're associating that with the GPT-4, so the large language model in Azure OpenAI. So what I can do is I can create this thing called a stuffed document chain. There's a lot of details about this. I don't want to get into the details in this particular video. We'll cover that in an upcoming video. But basically what you can do is that, let's just imagine that this prompt here was pages and pages of content, right? So what you can do is you can chunk this, this prompt, whatever you have, into multiple chunks. And what the stuffed documents chain does is basically allows you to stuff the chunks into your prompt. So it will basically make multiple calls, if required, into the large language model with chunks of documents and then summarize those all at the end, kind of bring those all together at the end. And that's what we're doing here. We don't need to do this. I'm doing it because it's a pattern that you'll need to learn a little later. But so that's why we're using that stuffed documents chain there. So what I'm doing is I have to build on the large language model chain. So I've got the prompt. I'm saying that I want to use this prompt in this large language model. And the variable that I'm going to be passing in is called text. And that's actually the name of this variable here. I could have called this anything, I would just have to call it. I would just have to make sure that this document variable name matches whatever this is there. So this could be an array. You could have multiple variables in here, so you could pass in multiple of these, but right now we're just passing in one and it's called text. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my prompt and I'm going to build a text splitter, which is going to chunk this whole prompt that we've got into 1,000 character chunks with an overlap of 250 characters. Now, this obviously is not 1,000 characters, so we're essentially going to have one chunk. But what it would do is if this was, say, 1,500 characters, we would have a chunk of 1,000 and then a chunk of 500 that get passed into the large language model, so that you can be more efficient in the way that you pass things into your prompts. You're not sending a huge context in. And you're only really sending in what's relevant here. So that's what this text splitter does. This was actually imported in here on this very first line here, or the second line of the imports from the Langchain.text splitter. And then we're setting the prompt text to, can you tell me a joke about a duck? And then that's what the prompt text, this is just a text variable. And the way we actually pass that into, remember we've got our prompt, we've got our chain, and then we've got our large language model chain, we've got our stuffed chain. What you have to do is you have to create documents from this prompt text. So you need to chunk this up into multiple documents if necessary. So it's assuming this is going to be over 1,000 characters, you would have multiple documents, but right now it's going to be one document. So we're creating a set of documents here in 1,000 character chunks, and then we're passing that into the evoke method of the stuffed chain. So we're saying, run this stuffed chain, which is the stuffed chain is the large language model chain, the prompt in the large language model, with the variable we're going to be passing in, which is the only parameter you need to pass into the invoke method, which is the document collection of the text that you created in your prompt. And then we just print that out, and then we're printing this callback here. So this callback is called in a code block here. So it's a with statement. You're calling this callback, and that will run after the fact to get your tokens and your dollar figure that you've got there. So I'm going to change this again back to just our basic joke creator, and so we don't tell a George Carlin joke, and maybe can run at a faster rate here. So we're running again. Tell me a joke about a duck, and it should come back here very quickly at this point. So, yep, can you tell me a joke about a duck? And hopefully it'll tell us a different joke. Let's see. Why did the duck get a red card in the soccer game? Because it kept fouling the other players. Too much of a dad joke here. Okay, well, that's really the first, I guess, conceptual video or conceptual code block that I wanted to cover here. This is pretty straightforward. Feel free to kind of go through the video, look at the code, copy and paste it. I'll paste it in the link below, or along with this video. But please just go through the code, take a look at it, see if there's anything that you can learn or take into your own code. Or if this is your first time coding, welcome aboard. This is hopefully a good start for you to learn this. But in our next video, we're going to start getting into the retrieval augmented generation aspects of this stuff. So we're going to start looking at reading files. We're going to look at document loaders and all of that. But I wanted to provide a foundational knowledge before we jump into what I call the hard stuff. It's not really hard, but it's just the more advanced topics here. But so that's all I have for you today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I hope this was educational. I hope you enjoyed the video. And until next time, I will end the webcast now. And just stay curious with this stuff. It's a lot of fun. So I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am.